Hello everyone, and in this video I've got a new race engine. Okay, so as you may or may not know, midway through last season the cylinder head on the Vixen developed an issue and was actually cracked. So out of pure desperation with the Silverstone Festival coming up, I had to try and find something. So Andy at Peninsula Historic Motorsport was a legend in lending me a Formula Ford cylinder head actually. Stuck that in the car and I got a few races out of it, which was mega, but I was down on power. So at the end of the season, speaking to Andy, thanking him for loaning me that head, he turned around and said, well, why don't I have a look at the engine in general? I know a really good guy that can sort that out. And so I thought, well, why not? So Andy took it down, and SRD Limited, who are in Cornwall, he comes highly recommended by Andy, and he took it on. He rang me up and broke the news to me that the cylinder head was cracked, but also the block was cracked. So here comes Andy again, knight in shining armour. He's got a block, and so he's been a legend in all of this actually. So got a block off him, and so it turned out to be a full engine rebuild. Luckily, the block hadn't let go too much, so crank, rods, pistons, all that sort of stuff was absolutely fine. So it just needed basically boring out and putting it back together with a new cylinder head. But it has returned and it's absolutely mega. Power output, it's also come back a lot better than it has been before. Power's actually rated at... You didn't think I'd actually tell you before the start of the season, did you? So you will have to wait and carry on watching my videos, because I may tell you a little bit in the future about that, but shh, I can't tell you everything. One thing that we do know now is my fancy 4-to-1 manifold. This thing looks great. Stuck it on the car. It's never actually been run on the dyno with an engine before. So that went on, and the engine lost nearly 15 horsepower. So I need an exhaust manifold. So essentially, speaking to Mark at SRD, the 4-to-1 manifold, you lose a huge amount of mid-range torque, and that affects the power, and so it just struggles to get going. Whereas using a 4-to-2-to-1 massively increases that mid-range torque, and so the engine just breathes 10 times better. A bit surprising, because you'd think big manifolds, big primaries, all going into one, big exhaust, job done. It doesn't work like that apparently, so that was a really interesting test. So I've got a manifold being made. I haven't got it yet, but it doesn't stop me from putting the engine back in the car. One thing I need to do though before it goes in, this is the clutch release bearing on the gearbox. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear, but that is very noisy. But in all fairness, that is the same one as I put in the gearbox when I first built the Vixen. So that's seen quite a few race starts actually, so it's done quite well. Clutch plate the same as well. The clutch plate, I don't know if you can see on there, it is nicely pretty much worn out to metal and cracked and knackered, so I got my money's worth out of that as well. All good. So in this video I'm just going to put the release bearing back on. I'll show you a bit of the gearbox. It's a Ford 2000E gearbox, so it's quite popular in classic cars, so I'll show you a bit about that, and then I'll just start prepping the engine, and I'll get it in. Okay, so this is the, excuse the cable, the batteries on this GoPro rubbish. This is a Ford 2000E gearbox, used in loads of stuff for lands. Really nice, standard gear set in it. You can get, I think, a close ratio, so it's like a long first gear. I've tidied all that up, cleaned it all up, gave it a little bit of a polish, not to some people's standards but to mine. So you can see in here I've taken that clutch release bearing out already, so it's just got the fork. This is a heavy duty fork as well that just comes through to the other side and is operated by the cylinder. So it's a very simple setup on these clutches, which is nice. So essentially the release bearing goes on the end of there, but it's actually got a bit of a carrier as well. So this is the carrier, the bearing goes on this part goes onto the fork, and it's just sort of held together nicely with these little sort of pins, so that just slides back on. So I'll get that on now, and then from there I can stick it onto the engine that's sat on the floor over there. So I'll go through the engine a little bit more, but I'll get the gearbox done first. Okay, I've put the new release bearing in, so in there, nice and new, doesn't make any noises, so that is all good. So gearbox is ready to go back on. So this is the engine, so you can see it's a fetching blue colour now instead of the black that it was. But yeah, new block, 711M block, which is the thicker cylinder wall block that you really want to use for racing. It's just a bit safer, even though I have just managed to crack one, but never mind. Same sort of inlet's been nicely cleaned up though by SRD. The twin Webers, so that's all the same, Weber 40s. We use an AP clutch. It's quite a strong bite, but you know, not too bad. Super lightweight flywheel with the ring gear just for the starter motor on there. And then around here, if you can see, it's a little bit dark. Oil pump, so that's like a scavenge pump because it's a dry sump engine. So it's all ready to go in. So now all we need to do is get the gearbox and slot it onto the back, remembering to put that spacer plate on first, slot the gearbox on, bolt it on, and then basically it's ready to go in the car. Okay, gearbox is on the engine now, so that is basically it. The only thing I do is starter motor. So this is a high torque starter motor, and you'll notice the cable is already attached, because what I found is the only way that can get positioned successfully without hitting the chassis on the car is if it's sort of facing in, and that connection for the wire is an absolute nightmare. So what I've got is a cable that actually comes through, so it's quite a long cable. I can attach it to the engine before it goes in, and then the cable attaches to a connection block that is far easier to access and also to disable in case I've got issues. So I'll put the starter motor on and the engine is ready to go in. So that is it for this episode. The next episode I'll actually be putting it in, and we'll be getting closer to being able to start it up for the first time. So see you later.